The night had been long, and the road stretched endlessly ahead of us until the car sputtered and came to a complete stop. I remember sitting there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, the glow of the dashboard lights flickering out, realizing quickly that we weren't going anywhere. It was late, too late to call anyone for help, and the repair shop we found online wouldn't open until morning. My son tried to stay positive, reassuring me that it wasn't the end of the world, but there was no denying the frustration of being stranded in an unfamiliar town with nothing around us but darkness. The only option left was a hotel that stood a block from the gas station where we'd coasted in. It wasn't glamorous, worn-out carpet, dim lobby lighting, the kind of place you'd only consider because you had no choice. I paid for the room while my son carried in our bags, and as I signed the receipt, the clerk mentioned it was the last room available. I felt a twinge of unease, not at the place itself, but at the sudden realization that this was not how the night was supposed to go. Walking down the narrow hallway, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation. The exhaustion of the day clung to me, and though I wanted to stay composed, inside I was unraveling a little. It wasn't fear, it was the strange awareness of being in such an unusual position, stuck in the middle of nowhere, leaning on the presence of my son in a way that felt unfamiliar. He was grown now, no longer the little boy I used to buckle into a car seat. His calmness, his steady way of handling the situation, struck me more than I expected. When we finally pushed open the door, the room was plain but warm enough. A single bed took up most of the space, with only a nightstand and a chair in the corner. It felt cramped, almost too close, yet there was relief in knowing we had somewhere to rest. My son gave me a small smile, brushing it off as if it didn't matter that we had no other option. I told myself the same. It was just one night, just a small inconvenience on the way to tomorrow. Still, something about it made me feel unsettled in ways I couldn't explain. The room felt smaller once the door shut behind us. The silence pressed in, broken only by the faint hum of the heater by the window. I tried to act natural, slipping off my shoes and setting my bag down, but the closeness of the space was undeniable. He sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through his phone as if nothing about this was strange, yet I could sense the awkwardness hanging between us. There was nowhere else to sit, nowhere else to go. We were simply here, together, with nothing but time before morning arrived. I tried to fill the air with casual conversation. We talked about the trip, the classes he'd been taking, little things that normally wouldn't have mattered. His laughter was light, easy, the kind that reminded me of when he was younger, though deeper now, more mature. I caught myself watching him a little too long, surprised by the way he carried himself, by how much he had grown into his own. It unsettled me, not because I didn't recognize him, but because I suddenly realized how little I'd noticed before. The bed was wide enough for two, but it didn't erase the fact that it was one. I busied myself in the bathroom for a while, pretending I needed extra time to change into something comfortable, delaying the inevitable moment when we'd both have to lie down. When I returned, he'd already stretched out, arms folded behind his head, as though he had claimed his space without hesitation. I hesitated by the chair, but it was hard and unwelcoming, and eventually I knew there was no avoiding it. I slid under the covers, keeping a careful distance, pulling the blanket tight around me as if that could create a barrier. The faint scent of his cologne lingered in the air, mixing with the faint detergent smell of the hotel sheets. It was simple, harmless, and yet my heartbeat betrayed me, steady but quick, aware of every inch of closeness. He said goodnight softly, his voice low, almost tender, and I echoed it back. The lights went out, but the tension did not. I stared into the darkness, trying to ignore the awareness that filled the room, telling myself it was nothing, that morning would come soon enough. Still, the air between us felt alive, charged in a way I couldn't quite admit to myself. The darkness made everything sharper. Every sound seemed louder, the rustle of sheets when he shifted, the quiet rhythm of his breathing beside me. I tried to keep still, pretending to sleep, but my mind refused to settle. The warmth of the bed, the faint brush of his arm when he rolled closer, stirred something I didn't want to acknowledge. It was innocent, unintentional, yet it sent a shiver through me. Minutes stretched like hours. I told myself to turn away, to push the thoughts down, but instead I found myself listening when he whispered softly, asking if I was awake. My answer came out quieter than I intended, but once spoken, it opened a door neither of us could close. We began talking again, this time in low voices, the kind reserved for secrets. He asked questions he'd never asked before, about my life, about things I thought he never noticed. The honesty in his tone disarmed me. At some point, his hand brushed mine under the blanket. Neither of us moved away. My breath caught, and I knew he felt it. A silence followed, thick and heavy, but neither of us pulled back. My heart pounded as though warning me, but there was no strength in me to listen. He shifted again, closer this time, until the space between us disappeared. When his lips found mine, it wasn't planned, wasn't even thought through, it just happened, a reckless surrender. For a moment I froze, torn between everything I knew was wrong and everything my body betrayed me with. Then I responded, unable to stop, unwilling to. The kiss deepened, and in it was years of restraint crumbling in an instant. I should have stopped it, but the more I tried to summon that voice of reason, the quieter it became. His touch moved from hesitant to certain, mine following without hesitation. The room disappeared, the world disappeared, leaving only the heat between us, the gravity of something forbidden pulling us further in. By the time it was too late to turn back, I already knew we had crossed a line that could never be undone. And yet, in that moment, I didn't care. The guilt would come later. For now, it was only the two of us, lost in a night that shouldn't have happened, but did. The morning light slipped through the thin curtains, washing the room in a pale glow that felt harsher than it should have. I opened my eyes slowly, the weight of what had happened pressing down on me before I even moved. For a moment, I stayed still, almost afraid to face the reality of it. He was lying beside me, quiet, his back turned as though the silence itself was a shield. Neither of us spoke, neither of us needed to. The truth sat heavy in the air between us. I slipped out of bed carefully, gathering myself, pretending the routine motions of dressing could undo the night. They couldn't. My hands shook as I zipped my bag, my chest tight with the flood of guilt I'd kept at bay only hours earlier. I told myself it was just a moment, a lapse, something that would never be repeated. But deep inside, I knew better. The memory was already carved into me, impossible to erase. When he finally rose, our eyes met briefly. There was no anger, no regret in his expression, only a quiet acknowledgement that we'd crossed into a place we could never explain to anyone else. We didn't talk about it. We couldn't. Instead, he simply asked if I was ready to go, his voice steady, almost protective. I nodded, grateful and guilty all at once. The car was ready at the shop by the time we arrived. The mechanic's casual tone felt jarring against the storm in my mind. We drove in silence for miles, the road stretching endlessly ahead, both of us pretending the night before had been nothing more than a bad dream. But every glance, every shift in the air between us, told me it was real. I thought of home, of the life I'd built, of the trust I had shattered in ways no one could see. Outwardly, nothing had changed. Inwardly, everything had. That night at the hotel was a secret we would carry quietly, bound by both shame and a strange, forbidden intimacy that neither of us could deny. Even now, as I recall it, I can't decide if I regret it entirely or if part of me is still caught in the pull of what happened. All I know is that one broken down car and a single night in a small town hotel changed everything forever.